the place of last week's planned giving program that was to be held at Bradley Hills Presbyterian Church. Today's program will be led by NCP Stewardship Chair Carl Madison. Many of you know Carl through his extensive work in helping churches both in Washington, D.C. area and around the country to implement planned giving programs. We will be joined also by National Capital Presbyter John Molina Moore, who will open the session with prayer. And then later in the program, Orlando Carr from the Presbyterian Foundation will come on to share some of the online giving tools that the foundation can make available to individual churches. Now, before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes for this webinar. Carl's presentation will run about 35 to 40 minutes. We do welcome questions from you in the audience. Please use the Q&A box to ask those questions, and I'll make sure your question gets read and answered. We will hold all questions to the end of Carl's presentation, and then we'll go to Orlando's presentation. And again, we can take questions after that as well. This entire session is being recorded and will be available for you to access later in case you have to leave the webinar early, refer to it in the future, or you want to share it with colleagues at your church, and we do hope you do that. The slides from this presentation will also be available in PDF format for you to download and refer back to at your convenience. However, I would recommend that you get a notepad and a pencil or pen, take notes on the points Carl and Orlando will be making. Now with that, I'll ask John to lead us in prayer.
Hey everyone, glad you decided to join with us as we navigate together how we're going to help support our congregations and our ministry. So let me open us up in prayer. Gracious and loving God, even in the midst of uncertainty, we look for your love, your grace, and your promise to be the beacon of light that is guiding us through all of this. We thank you for the people who have gathered here remotely and digitally to learn from each other, to hear from each other, and to see how we can continue to serve your church to the best of our ability. We ask that the teachings and questions and answers that are offered here today offer us a guidance, a trail toward the light that you are shining down in all of our congregations. We ask that you bless this time, and we pray these things in your powerful and wonderful name. Amen.
Thank you, John. Carl, I'm going to turn it over to you to begin the presentation. And again, we'll take questions after Carl's presentation.
Thank you, David. Thank you, John, for opening us in prayer. Very grateful for that. We certainly need it at this time. If I can do a quick sound check, there's a little bit of garbled. Is my voice garbled? I can change mics if need be. Are we okay? David, thumbs up.
You sound great, Carl. I can hear you.
Wonderful.
You're fine.
Thank you. Great. Well, listen, so grateful that everyone is here today. It's a real pleasure to be with you virtually. It's our new medium, right? So generosity in uncertain times. Charitable giving is expected to decrease this year, perhaps very significantly. I've heard some really fearful estimates, but I feel it's a bit irresponsible to forecast the wind direction in the midst of a tornado. But we know still that we need to get prepared, and we need to get prepared fast. So one thing that we know is that our congregation members are still going to be generous. That's going to continue to happen. But their generosity is going to happen despite their having much less to share. So for each dollar that our congregation members are going to contribute, they're going to be a lot more intentional than ever in the past decade, if not decades. So it's imperative that we demonstrate the value of their dollar by showing them that giving through our congregation is a brilliant use of their resources. So today's conversation is about how we can encourage our members' generosity in light of a sudden and already very deep crisis. So what are some of the basic steps for us to energize our members to be the church in these new ways and to fuel this vital ministry that we're all involved in? So for today, we're going to touch first on what just happened. Second, we'll touch on ways to adapt on Sundays, and then on ideas for what we can do during our weekdays. And we're going to wrap it up with some ideas for next steps before I hand it over to our colleague Orlando to talk about specific online giving program opportunity. So today's conversation is how to encourage members' generosity. Let's kick it off with what just happened. I don't want to spend much time on this. It's kind of a real downer for me. I'm sure perhaps for all of you, but we need to call this out. We need to name it because of the gravity and the urgency of this change. We're in the midst of a sudden and massive turning point. It's major for all of our lifetimes, perhaps the greatest many of us will face. What just happened has changed our behavior in the church immediately. So it's worth it to state what just happened, because this webinar is really our first attempt at trying to respond to it. So it's still hard to believe these words. A global pandemic has spread around the world in weeks. Health systems are just starting to be overwhelmed, and already in some countries forcing unthinkable decisions, choosing whom to save, whom not to save. And to stem this flow, entire countries are shutting down. This is the story of video games that I thought we would never, ever see. So financial markets are slammed. We've lost market value of approximately $12 trillion in the past month. If you've heard my webinars before, you probably know I need to draw a picture for myself, if not for everyone else. So I'll show you what this looks like. If you lie down $100 bills stacked, this would run about 7,572 miles. That's about the difference from Santiago to Anchorage in $100 bills, stacked, not end to end. So clearly a massive contraction has already begun. And this plus that equals panic and anxiety. This combination is going to feed on itself. It just is. And certainly hold off any stabilization or any recovery until the pandemic crisis turns a corner. And the world economy might take much longer to heal. I'm done with that. But now you and I are wondering, what do we do? How do we do church now? Clearly, we're all still on the front end of these crises, and these changes are still happening rapidly. So in a matter of 24 hours, all of this that I share might be useless information. But still, we have to adapt with what we know. So what we've done in the past week is explored very quickly some great ideas and innovative solutions to keep churches supported and innovating during these crises. In fact, I've spoken with many colleagues at the Presbyterian Foundation who have their finger on the pulse. I've spoken with stewardship professionals who are on staff at Presbyterian churches. And I've worked with my Genius Tech colleague, Adam Kehoe, on some basic research on topics that should tell us what people are doing to adapt. So there's some pretty cool stuff in here. I'll only have enough time to share the highlights, but let's get moving. First, what do we do on Sunday? Hey, members will not be in church perhaps for the foreseeable weeks, if not a bit longer. And from a stewardship and generosity perspective, our risks then are that our members are not going to witness the things that are happening since we are not together at worship, right? There's a risk that our members will not be present to contribute through the offering plate. There's a risk that there will be great financial uncertainty. People will feel and perhaps even be in actuality poor from this market turmoil and the job, the employment issues that are likely to follow. So each of this is more than an if. Each of these things are a probability if they haven't already arrived on some of our footsteps, our doorsteps. Fortunately, we have a strong place in our members' lives, more so than almost any of these other more than 1 million nonprofits that are taking an increasingly large share of the generosity from our members. We meet every single week for worship. Still, we do, hopefully. And now more than in most of our memories, we have a Sabbath. We are perhaps one of the only regular events for our members. This is like, let's say, the old days in some sense. So talking about Sundays, we're going to cover worship and the offering, those two items specifically. So the only way to worship right now, I believe throughout the Presbytery, is virtual, right? Live streaming is broadcasting the service over the internet. That's what I think most are trying to head towards or considering. This had been a really rare practice in most Presbyterian churches, and I believe in this presbytery as recent as 3 weeks ago. But today, this is our only option, and many churches have moved very quickly towards this. In fact, by the end of last week, we did a web survey, my colleague Adam and I, and found that about 36 churches in the Presbytery have live stream options already. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a huge number. That's pretty fast moving. These Presbyterians are adapting. Many, however, have had to cancel their worship services or are still exploring. So if your church is exploring and looking toward what others have been doing, we found through some research that the vast majority of national capital Presbytery churches are using live stream through Facebook Live. And we're actually seeing that in a lot of other areas as well. So if you're looking for something that is being done elsewhere, live streaming is most commonly right now done through that for our churches. If you're a smaller church and finding it a struggle to provide that live streaming of your own worship service, we have seen others who are considering working with other local churches to join their live stream worship together, or at least to refer their members to the live stream of another local congregation. Otherwise, you might have members who are missing worship entirely at a time in life when perhaps we might need it the most. So from a stewardship perspective, canceling church might affirm their fears and concerns that activity at our congregation is no longer happening. So for its maximum impact, they might really find it helpful to have other destinations besides our congregation for their dollars to have a great impact. So here's what it looks like in my congregation, congregation period. I'm at Georgetown Presbyterian. Easter 2018, I just grabbed a picture. It was shoulder to shoulder in the pews. And we're coming up on Easter 2020, perhaps with a skeleton worship team, so that the rest of us in those pews are going to be at home in our pajamas with our family. And so church has to come to us. And we're trying to have worship and fellowship in these new ways that we've all pondered in the past. Can we do all this virtually? But it never would have been acceptable before in many of our congregations. Oh, but it's here. So for now, here is your pew. This is what everyone's pew looks like now. It's a screen. And think about it. Without this screen, you really don't have a pew for the foreseeable future. Now, speaking of doing things that were never acceptable before, let's talk about money during the worship service. I heard some wincing across the virtual network here. Believe me, this is a hard one for me too. But we have to get comfortable with this concept really quickly. And here's why. Our weekly presence together in worship or in our buildings even, bricks and mortar, is a constant visual reminder of what is happening and that it is happening. Our weekly gathering is evidence of our worship, of our fellowship. It shows our processes and our deliberations. It shows our outreach, and it shows our meaning and significance in the community. And without our physical presence, we're losing a visual cadence of witnessing the great things that are happening through this congregation. So without a concerted effort to reinforce that great things are happening, or still happening each week, that absence will weaken that connection. So our job is to tighten that connection as best we can with these new tools that we really need to figure out how to use. Here's where it gets real. 78% of gifts are given during a worship service according to the National Study of Congregations Economic Practices. Imagine having no worship service means closing the spigot to 78% of revenue for the foreseeable future. That's really not a viable option. So let me introduce to you today's offering plate. This is it. This is your pew. This is your plate. The next several slides now assume that you're going to have a live stream or an online style of worship during this crisis. The bottom line being that this is the new place for us to invite and to encourage generosity. And this is where we show that tool to convert that generosity into an actual financial gift, into action. So in a nutshell, You want to use this tool right here to invite online viewers to give, to show them where it is to give, and to share the gratitude of their gift and to demonstrate the impact of their gift. So we're going to look at actual examples of how to turn this computer or the screen into an offering plate in just a moment. But next let's look at online giving across National Capital Presbytery. Again, my colleague Adam and I, my colleague Adam is the genius with some of these things. But this is churches in the National Capital Presbytery. We scanned and found that about 40% currently do not provide online giving, or at least they do not have a findable link. In online giving throughout National Capital Presbytery churches, the most common vendor is actually the Presbyterian Foundation. Their online giving tool is used by about 28% of the churches who do use online giving. And full disclosure, I'm the Vice President of Planned Giving Resources of the Presbyterian Foundation. It's not my product line, but it's something that that I need everyone to know. And that's actually why we have Orlando sharing his words at the end, so that it's not an embedded, perceived as an advertisement. It's a gift to the church, and it's not. And it's something we'll talk about at that point. About 9% of the churches use Realm for online giving, which usually integrates into their Realm church software. And there are about 7 other providers who have each about 4% or less of online giving users of the Presbytery. One is PayPal, and that may be more prevalent, yet more difficult for us to find on the website. So once a church has online giving, it's imperative that it is findable. You know, that sounds obvious, right? But it must be evident. On the website, 24 hours a day, you have to have an evident place for giving, and on the live stream on Sunday mornings. So let's look at a great example from our committee member, Jim Feather, from the Stewardship Committee for the Presbytery. His home church, Vienna Presbyterian. First, notice for the live stream at Vienna. Here it is. On Sunday mornings, there's a doorway here. It's a hot link that makes it very clear that this is where you can go to make a gift. And the speaker on that live stream screen can point the viewer below to say, make your gift, please click the link below. And also notice second that giving button at the top of the screen is always there on the website, during live stream and not. It's a very clear place that's always present. You should always have a door to open for people to make a gift. And imagine when these buttons are not there, the viewer has to go to search somewhere else to figure out the details for making their gift. Research shows what you and I probably already know quite well, that website visitors will not try beyond a few seconds or a few clicks to make a gift. Lesson, if it's hard to find, it's almost like not having it at all. Now, at the beginning of their offertory, a worship leader shares a compelling message and an invitation for stewardship at Vienna Presbyterian Church. Fantastic. They're talking about it. And then it goes to the to music. And look here, they take it further. You can flash a message on the screen during the offertory. Vienna broadcasts from their website. It's a little bit more high-end than a lot of our churches can do. And I mentioned that most National Capital Presbytery churches are using an outside vendor, Facebook Live. So I'll show you what that looks like. Facebook Live's portal, you can actually shrink and box in their live stream to put that same kind of message Vienna has. This is where you can show text like group prayer, words for the hymn, and voila, stewardship message here with a link. So let's head back to Vienna to close that loop. We clicked on giving, right? And it brings us to this page. You see here, this is right on. Look here, they show all the ways to give, not just online giving. We need online giving, that's the urgency, but this layout here is so right, because most people coming certainly want online or text giving, so that's why they prioritize those in these high priority real estate of your website, so visitors don't have to go further. But there are the other ways to give, like legacy giving, that's some good stuff, and cash and checks. So don't demote those check writers. They're often very incredibly significant givers. And legacy gifts the same thing. Everyone needs to be seeing this message about legacy gifts whenever their eyes pass over this page. So it's the recurring visibility that's subtle but very helpful. Also, this page is nicely done because it's easy and fast to read. Whenever possible, use these big icons and big buttons and large text for titles. The other key way to give, and it's online but not, but it's really key for many of us. So we really have to mention it, is online banking. This is a transaction of our gift through our own banking portal. I, the giver, can manage it more directly than I can through my credit or debit card payment, especially managing recurring payments. So you can go, this is a Bank of America sample page. It's really fast and easy. Plus, the online banking transactions don't assess a fee like online giving, which the average seems to be about 3% of the transaction. So for most of our regular givers, and often our most generous givers, this could be the most convenient way, and it sends more value to to ministry than giving through a card. These questions are coming up. Are there other commonly requested giving tools? Venmo and Apple Pay. Wouldn't that be great, right? Well, Apple Pay seems to be something they've adopted already in the UK, even a couple of years ago. And Venmo is working towards supporting churches, or so I hear. It seems that they are piloting some partnerships, but it's not generally available for the rest of our churches right now. I'm sorry to say, but I want to answer that one before it comes up. So let's move to weekdays. Our Sundays are totally online now. We've talked about how to address that. Now, our weekdays might soon be work from home if they're not already. Will we have more time on our hands? Will we have less time on our hands? If we have more time, this might be easier. We've seen some wonderful ideas that we're happy to share because they're going to be very helpful in fostering generosity. So let's kick off a few of these that we've seen over the past week in our exploration. Theme. Consider a theme for stewardship during the crisis. It's not stewardship as usual. So let's name that. We've seen several churches adapting early to the crisis. They grabbed on to comforting words for adapting to their new way of church and to stewardship. So it's nice to have this reminder of the current purpose of our giving. It's the same but not. Here are three I'll list. Holding faith together from 2nd Indianapolis. I really like that. Together at home, and we're in this together. And notice all three of those have together. How about considering a one-time stewardship communication? Call out the difficult topics. Note that things are different. And share that here's how we keep going, by keeping giving. You can see here some pointers, some nice messaging. People are seeking hope more than they have in a long time. We're not on break. In fact, we're being called into action. We're adapting now as quickly as possible. We need to innovate. This is all new to us. Our call is to serve God's people in crisis. We invite all to consider holding fast with their generosity if they can, or increase if they're able. The very forward-looking perspective, acknowledging the challenges, but inviting us all to step out, perhaps even in the discomfort, so that we can be God's people together. How about this one? Add some compassion. We had a wonderful question over the weekend. It hit this, and so I've incorporated some of the words that came in. Bring compassion into your communications. Everyone in the congregation is already impacted to some degree. On current trends, many are likely to fall ill. Many are likely to lose their jobs. Many enjoying retirement are going to have fear about their income. Many are going to have a combination of catastrophic health and financial, perhaps even catastrophe. Remind everyone that our generosity, yours and mine, make this crisis ministry possible. Because of our collective generosity, we can adapt to how we can be the light in the community where we are most needed. So we want to invite those who can listen for the call to step forward. Yet at the same time, we want to invite those members and the community who are suffering to take their time and invite them to heal. Every single one of us has been hurt. We've had vulnerable moments. We're going to have more of that. We've all been sick, anxious. Some of us, maybe not all, have been poor. We often feel driven to mask it. It's going to be hard to mask this in the coming period, but let's consider how we can make it easier and less embarrassing for those who are suffering. Consider inviting those who are suffering to take the break that they deserve. Invite them to ask for help. And as they recover, their day will come to lead again. And gratitude, more than ever, we need to express it's mandatory today that we express our thanks for generous gifts. Imagine that you feel called into action here. Imagine that you've been moved to make a larger gift, a sacrificial gift to the work of the church because of this crisis. And imagine that the pastor calls you and says, I don't know your level of giving, but I've been told it's increasing. I don't want another moment to pass without you knowing how incredible grateful we are. In such time like this, your commitment is really a light to many. I just needed to thank you. Or imagine hearing nothing. Given the options, let's thank someone. Let them know how important they are. And if time is available, consider making weekdays into a thank you campaign. Compose a general letter that thanks everyone for the many ways of being generous, financially and otherwise, as able, especially now. And show the impact of this generosity. Start telling what happened. Send notes to generous givers who have continued their giving or maybe even increased giving. However, let's put a pin on this one because mailed notes we might want to hold off while we focus on email. It might only be a couple of sentences, but this is incredibly welcome. Write on there to please accept this in lieu of a preferred handwritten note. And share that we don't know enough about the virus and we care too much to send paper at this time. And phone calls. This is a great time to be calling people. The stewardship team or pastors can make thank you calls that serve the dual purpose of a thank you and a check-in. A pastor might say that in our congregation, we're unaware of your gift amounts, but I'm aware of your continued or even your increased generosity, and we are deeply grateful. Our worship community is being called into action, and your gift makes that possible. How about this, a 90-second how-to video, quick primer on how to give online. Here's a great one from Bel-Air Presbyterian Church. It is actually a 90-second video, and a pastor welcomes everyone to consider online giving, and then shows a screencast on actual steps to make the gift. It's really a very welcoming, brief, and efficient video, and very clear. Provided perhaps on your website or social media, and how about even right after the worship service? Now, finding ways that the church can serve, consider a help hub. If we're seeking out and serving each other and our community, our congregations are going to see us as a very effective place for their generosity. See here on this page how Bellevue Presbyterian outside of Seattle has quickly assembled the basic questions we all need to be asking. This one addresses how we can be the church while we regain our footing. Small print, so I'll just share with you. These button includes the request to click I need prayer, or I need help, or I can help. The three buttons at the bottom are how to do church at home. The next one is kids and students, and then online groups and classes. This church is clearly, in the first three, adapting to crisis, and then the second three, trying to provide continuity in this new way. So some churches are also providing new online ways to connect that fit their congregation, like music gathering on Zoom, morning prayer, or an evening worship. So the takeaway here is that adapting to needs and answering these questions makes makes it far simpler for us to ask for gifts because we are truly having an impact. So continue to place links on ways to give to support this ministry wherever you have one of these programs or these opportunities where we're benefiting anyone with outreach and ministry. Here are some great ideas. Check-in videos. Here's what's going on. Remember, people might forget if we don't tell them or they don't witness. One church here is Second Presbyterian in Indianapolis asked their various department areas to each provide brief 90-second videos on what is happening at the church in their area and some thoughts on good things to do and know. I believe that they're sending them out every day or so, and here is one. It's a great message on generosity to their congregation on a variety of ways of generosity, and it didn't focus actually on financial right up front. So this is by a great one, Reverend John Coppage. And a survey. Consider the possibilities of a survey. It's an outstanding way to get people to self-select. It's still a passive tool that will reach only those, the website is still a passive tool. The website will only reach those who are led there or are seeking something specific. Then they will volunteer their information. It's a much smaller sample size. But a survey is a more active information funnel. It captures far more information and it reaches many who are hesitant to step forward to ask or to give or to volunteer. The survey is going to tell you specifically where the congregation is on a really wide variety of topics. It's a solid way to get a more complete picture of the status today and the wants and needs and struggles. So imagine hearing these things. This is my preferred way of connecting, email or newsletter or website or phone, or my preferred way to worship is live stream or recorded. I need help operating a live stream. That's going to happen a lot. Or people struggling to get on a live stream. If they don't show up, they don't worship with us. I would feel this way about Thursday night worship. I am able to help with, I need more connection. Stewardship will be blank for me this year. And when you hear all of that feedback from your congregation, you're going to have a much better sense of where they are right now, though it may change dramatically in the coming weeks and months. Here's one. Consider setting a COVID-19 assistance fund. Colleague Robert Hay at the Presbyterian Foundation recommended this in his recent article on stewardship in a pandemic. Great article on the foundation's PresbyterianFoundation.org's website. Many in your congregation and community are going to be impacted. So this is a wonderful demonstration of how your congregation can step forward and serve proactively during this crisis. All right, how about this? Last idea. You know, often we look at stewardship strategies like incremental increases in annual giving or gifts from planned giving or birthday funds. How do we encourage gifts from our current members? The rarity is considering new givers. No one does that, right? That's just too hard. Well, hold on a moment. Now, perhaps this is that time when new members or new friends of the church might be a very strong possibility. This crisis, in some ways, is like others. It brings fear and anxiety, but there's some new features here that are deeper than what we felt in a very long time. There's a sober assessment of life, of death, of values, and oh yeah, a lot of people have postponed that inevitable thought process on faith. But now Sunday is quiet again. We haven't been, well, we've been asking for this, right? A Sabbath. Suddenly it's practically solitary. We're in a time where our worship services might be the only gathering for the weekend, maybe even for the whole week. So often that connection with our church has decreased for many because of schedules or personalities or soccer games or brunch. So an invitation might be a very timely gift, and it might be a very dark moment for them. I promise you that they are feeling intense anxiety and fear, just like you and I. But you and I have each other, and we meet for worship each week together. And we can do great service to old friends, to new friends, to family, still with some kind words, reaching out, and even an invitation to join us on Sunday. And frankly, unless they have another church, they're probably in a situation where they have time available and alas the desire again. So yeah, this one is a stretch for many, but you get the value, right? You see where this is going. It was at least worth putting out there. So we've covered a whole lot. Maybe now let's cover quite simply and briefly some next steps. One is do something. Identify what you need to do and rank them in order of priority. You start with a couple of ideas, and most importantly, do them well. If you're at the very most initial basic starting part, starting out, get a live stream or figure out how to provide something to your congregation. Consider online giving if you don't have it already. If you've got that, move to this next step beyond. Make sure that there are ways to give that are obvious and easy to access on the website, and invitation for people to come in with these new ways to participate, to seek help, and to provide help. And if you've got that, find a way to thank everyone that you possibly can for their continued generosity. And even thank those who cannot give for their past generosity and for the help that they might be in the future. And the second thing is bring hope. Most importantly, our big picture is this, bring hope with every tool that you have. We're all looking for it, and we can be the providers of that. We have a wonderful message. And this all will be past us one day. And I think when we look back upon our actions, we will all hope to hear those words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." On that note, I've run through a lot of things. My apologies for as fast and as shallow as it may have been. We've been scanning as quickly as possible great ideas to bring it back on how to stay connected and a part of the generosity picture of our congregation members. So I hope we can do another one soon. And when we do, I promise it will be more tight, coherent, but in the middle of a crisis, a bunch of good stuff is better than not.
Okay, thank you, Carl. And if you have questions, you can use the Q&A box. It's easier for us to get them to Carl there. So the first one's from Charles, concerned about timing and emphasizing financial stewardship in the midst of pastoral sensitive time. What are your thoughts?
Can you repeat that, Dave? I'm sorry.
He's Charles, concerned about timing and emphasizing financial stewardship in the midst of this pastorally sensitive time.
Yeah, definitely it's a pastorally sensitive time. And it depends a lot on your level of comfort. I think it would be good to take some baby steps on this. One thing I think would be ensuring that we thank people. It's a great time to use that tool in stewardship to show gratitude. It's a great time to show impact and let people sense and see how grateful we are, and as importantly, how invaluable we are as a congregation, and that we're doing things. Doing a stewardship ask right now is a challenge, and it is better to do it softly at this point than not. The question that also came in over the weekend is a vital one, that a lot of people are not going to be able to help, or don't know right now. I think all of us are probably close to that situation. What are we going to be able to do this year? And it's probably time to open up that conversation, to have that letter that says, some of us we're all in this together. We're all perhaps suffering. Some of us are going to be able to step up. Some of us are not. There's an art to this. It is a difficult conversation. I would welcome any of the other, hosts. Orlando, maybe you've spoken with some churches, or John, you might have actually had some experiences as well. Like, how are we going to make it through this? And if there's something that we could or should be saying at this time that's going to be really helpful to our congregation and making them feel generous or not embarrassed to not be?
Yeah, I think you hit a lot on it already. Just that open line of communication and informing people that, yeah, we're all in this together. Some of us are in different situations than others. And I think that the ask doesn't feel as obtrusive if you're still connected with your congregation. So the setting up regular online, not just Sunday morning, but how are you engaging with your congregation throughout the week? Is that when it comes time to having that, how do we navigate our way through generosity and stewardship and giving through this time? You've shown that you're still connected and here listening to what the people are needing and asking for and still being able to minister to them. So I think that it is both of those going along at the same time of having conversations about what generosity looks like for the entire spectrum of your congregation, knowing that people are going to be in very different situations, and opening channels to have those conversations with the members of your congregation about how they best see to navigate through the times ahead.
And I would agree as well. I think the online giving option is a component to all of the other reaches you've done throughout the week. Most of my congregations, for instance, are exploring technology for weekly Bible study, for shepherding, reaching out to the members of the church, especially those that might be in the populations that we are most concerned about. So I don't think that the only message should be, of course, giving online. It should be a component to the other messaging that's already occurring within the congregations.
Good.
Right. Thank you.
Good. Carl, here's a question sent in before the webinar from Dick. Members who lose their jobs or become ill with the virus have sudden loss of income, may feel embarrassed or worried they can't pay their pledges or continue giving if they don't pledge. Should church stewardship teams take the initiative now to mitigate the embarrassment and worry some members may feel by indicating they understand what the loss of income means? And for those who may experience this, can extend the time period for paying their pledge or givers to resume giving?
Yes. It's actually a comment more than a question. It fits nicely with the preceding question. I think that's what's on all of our minds is how do we continue to discuss this in a period of crisis, and how do we continue to encourage generosity from the stresses that are just about to happen en masse. I appreciate that question so much that I actually adjusted a few of my slides. I'm grateful that it came in earlier this weekend, so that I did try to address this earlier to some degree, although it's hard to do on the fly because we're still in the middle of this. I think it's important to call this out. Generosity is not a pressuring activity, I hope. Generosity is a way that we can respond, be grateful, and can, with our time, but also with our treasure and talent. It's how we support each other. It's how we make our ministries possible. It's how we make them thrive. And I think we need to call that out right now and acknowledge that not everyone is going to be able to take that step and lead. When you're sick, it's your turn not to. When you're hurt, it's your turn not to. And for those of us who aren't as sick or might not feel as poor or haven't lost a job, that's when we can step forward and lead, because one day it will be our turn to be carried by someone else. And I think it's in my perspective, I would welcome others, very much welcome others. It's that invitation to listen, to feel is your call to step forward with financial generosity or time generosity or talent generosity. And when you're hurt, to be open to being hurt. And your day will come to be the hero. But you can't have that until you've had rest. I don't know if that question can be answered accurately or specifically. I think it's actually the medium or the environment that we're all in right now. I think it kind of summarizes what our fear is of making people feel not enough. I think it summarizes our fear of over asking people when it's a horrible time to do so. But I think maybe we should be telling people to listen for their call.
Okay, let me get the questions first. There's a number of comments, just make sure we get through this. Patrick asks, what about the best practices for sharing online giving options via Zoom? You talked about when viewing through a church website, Facebook Live, or YouTube, but can you share a bit about Zoom as well? I could take that one, Carl, if you want, just because I have a lot of experience on Zoom. I use Zoom in my business every day. Zoom is a communication tool. It's great for one-to-many, but it's also great for one-to-few or few-to-few. The way, though, for at least actually clicking links like you saw in the Facebook Live or you saw in some of the web pages is really one option is the chat box, to drop a link into the chat box if you're doing communication that way. Yes, you can put it up on the slide and type in the URL, which may or may not be too long to type in unless you shorten it. But Zoom is more of a traditional communication for, I think it'd be great for Bible study, for classroom, and where I think if you're live streaming or going out one-to-many or a few-to-many in a service, I think I'd still opt towards obviously the website, Facebook Live, YouTube, where you can have both the communications and be able to link or click to the website. So that would be my experience with Zoom on that. Okay.
I'll say that on our research, we looked at what tools. We haven't seen Zoom much at all. And I was curious enough, and I will actually go back and look to see how other churches have been doing that if they have. But to Dave's point, Zoom is really an interactive program. And so I've seen almost everyone using it for meetings and gatherings, but almost no one using it for worship services.
Right.
But I'll look into it.
Okay, Megan has a question here. A number of our members are older and living on retirement income, so they're very anxious. Also, early surveys have shown little interest in online giving, especially among older folks. Any ideas how to facilitate continued weekly giving?
I guess my first question would be, is there a worship service in place? Online giving is an invaluable tool for a worship service and for having a button and a link. But if people are not using it, you can certainly talk about stewardship with a Give Now button without having online giving. It's so easy to do it. It would be a good idea to still have online giving, but elevate other ways to give when you show, here's a program we're doing. We have a new, for example, that COVID-19 assistance fund, or we're continuing our feeding the homeless ministry, but not with, by takeaway boxes. If you would like to be part of this, volunteer here or give here. And how to give might be, instead of prioritizing the online giving button, might be demoting that and prioritizing where to send your check or how to make an online banking bill. The methods and tools are really important to listen to the congregation so you don't start doing online giving where nobody really cares. It's not a great place to prioritize it. I'm not sure if I've answered that well, but it would be helpful to know if there's a worship service, because that's an excellent place.
Yes, Megan says there is a worship service, but their older folks are not using it. But now let me add this. Patrick had a good comment here. We also highlight the opportunity to give, it's jumping around, the opportunity to give of talents by teaching others to use the online streaming platforms if they're having technology challenges. I know a number of older folks may have a computer, but not have any idea how to access online giving or even do much with their email. But that's an interesting idea if folks want to help out other members learning how to use it, particularly if they have a computer or computer access.
And I think for that older crowd generation who isn't familiar with online giving, and it might be too much of a hurdle to set that up. Carl, you already hit on this about making sure that your message from your church is clear, that we do have 4 different ways for you to continue to give, and just making sure that your people know that. So if it is sending in a weekly check, letting them know how that's going to be processed and handled internally by your church. Is your office administrator or is the pastor going to get the mail every week and still making deposits? I think all that information is probably, the clarity of that is going to help people to determine how it is that they'll continue to support, because they know your church is doing A, B, and C, and it's clear about how you're offering, how you're helping engage people in continue to give.
Great. Let me just, let me, so actually, Patrick added to this also, their communal worship services have been done via Zoom the past 2 weeks. So rather than a passive viewing experience, they've had back and forth liturgy, sharing joys and concern by community. I know at Darnestown, we had our children's message was opened up on Zoom. So while we had a live stream through YouTube, the pastor was actually talking to different children who were online and sharing our children's message. So definitely multiple ways you can use the different services to work with this. So let me see. Trying to get through a lot of questions, a lot of comments here. Molly, I recorded my service yesterday and published it to our YouTube channel. When we got to the Giving Back to God part of our regular service, I mentioned folks could send pledges to the church and give themselves by keeping up with their neighbors. I think financial and social giving needs to be held up together. Very good point. Let's see. Okay, and then several churches are using that. People are going to the chat box and posting too. I want to make sure I get questions on both sides. Let's see. Let's take a break right now and move on to Orlando, and then we can take the last questions at the end again. Make sure we get caught up with everything. You want to do that? Orlando, you ready to take control?
Sure. Okay, we're going to take just a few moments to cover some online giving items. First and foremost, my name is Orlando Carr. I am the Ministry Relations Officer for National Capital Presbytery and others within the Mid-Atlantic Synod of the Presbyterian Foundation. What we do at the foundation certainly assist congregations in all areas of financial stewardship, and online giving is one of our newer services, about 5 years or so now. And of course, as you may imagine, the past several days, our interest in this service has definitely increased. I think Carl has definitely established the why. I think you can see why we're including this conversation, therefore, in today's presentation about stewardship in these uncertain times. Online giving does allow us an option for our members, of course, to give electronically. Online giving for many has different meanings, different understanding. Exactly what is it? So what we're talking about today, online giving is referring mainly to the ability to give through your credit card, debit cards, and of course through automatic drafts of your account through the website. So I know often when folks are thinking about the concept of online giving, one of the struggles can often be we would not like our members to go in debt. We don't want them using credit cards to therefore give to the church. If that is a concern, what many of my churches do, of course, to work around that is to focus more heavily on the debit card message. That it's not, of course, we will accept credit cards through the service for technicality, but you can certainly do lots of communications, emails, newsletters, etc., especially during this time to clarify. We have lots of promotional material available that can help you with that. And then once we are resuming more of an in-person type of worship, we have bulletin inserts as well. So from our perspective, and I guess, of course, I'm going to be biased, but we do believe the service to be easy. It is expected for many as we even look beyond into the future. We are definitely moving into an area where folks are expecting our congregations to have the ability to give in some way electronically. You have probably purchased concert tickets now more than ever using electronic giving, or for other events, et cetera. It is becoming an expectation, just as now when you purchase your groceries that they will take debit cards. Many are expecting our congregations to have that same opportunity. We will cover the cost structure in just a bit. A little bit of boring statistical information for you that will just kind of plead the case of why we do online giving. Online giving is definitely increasing. That is in 2012, 163 million to our congregations. But we have 62% of our congregants desiring to give electronically. In a recent study by Vanco, who does, Vanco is our back-end system of the Presbyterian Foundation's online giving. 58% of our members are now attending service at least once per week. And of course, that means our regular service meetings. And so online giving, while that is important for our members, we are not seeing as often members attending church at the frequency they once did. And so online giving allows your members to give even when they are not physically in front of you. I use online giving exclusively as a giver to my church. Within my area, within my profession, I'm normally in someone's congregation almost every Sunday. So I maybe attend my church once or twice a month at the most. But I am luckily able to give consistently to my church because of the online giving that we use, which is through the Presbyterian Foundation. Some other additional stats here for you. As of 2014, have about 42% of our churches giving online. Of course, that amount is increasing daily. Often we assume that it is not for members of a certain age, but truthfully, our numbers or statistics don't always support that. Online giving is like everything else, that as technology changes, you have lots of folks that are in retirement age, playing with gadgets and other things that are really enjoying learning about technology, and therefore it is quite popular. And some of our older members have really enjoyed the ability to give. It is definitely a way to increase your month-over-month revenue, your online revenue. Often, I look at it this way. Sometimes we will have the discussion of the members of my church may or may not respond to this, but often it's for the members who aren't giving currently at all. That these are members who maybe are not giving because perhaps they don't carry checkbooks to traditional service, or maybe they never thought about, truthfully, the option of having the ability to give online. And online giving actually gives you the ability to reach that audience of those that perhaps would give just because it is easy to do so. So think about those differences, think about your generational differences, your cultural differences. And I've heard thus far on the call, every church is different. And so when we are looking at ways to communicate or to market this to our congregations, we can't ignore that. Your church, therefore, is going to have questions that are going to be different from Carl's church or others, et cetera. So thinking about that when you are preparing your messaging, we have definitely stressed during this call the importance of pastoral care during these times. What types of messaging would your members respond to? This is no different than anything else that we would reach our congregation and try to make sure they are clear and have the ability to ask questions and how we're able to answer that, et cetera. If anything, it could possibly increase engagement. You may have some of your members call and say, hey, we have this new service and we would like to offer our assistance with helping you understand how it works. Do you have any questions, et cetera? One of the potential drawbacks that I could see of rolling out at this time is that you would lose the ability to do the traditional, morning announcement where you are able to promote this to the congregation. So having some type of phone tree, perhaps led by your stewardship committee or ministry team or leadership members of the church, et cetera, having them be proactive and reaching out to the members to actually explain the nuances of the service could be quite helpful. So how it works in terms of the actual mechanics of the service, once the service is created, there is a button that you can add to your website that actually says Give Now. That button can go wherever you want it to go. Most will put it on the home page or the front page, but some will put it on the About Us or actually add a tab that says Give to the Church. And then on that tab, as we looked at earlier with Vienna, you can have multiple ways to give. I have a few churches that don't have websites. And one of the questions that I have answered recently during this time has been, can we add this to Facebook? Yes, you can. There are ways that you can do that through social media. The experience is different, of course, but we have a wonderful online services group that continues to amaze me during this time of how they're able to keep up with the creation of these accounts. While we are experiencing, as you may imagine, a heavier load, that definitely impacts how quickly we're able to turn the accounts and set up around. We are able still to process them. So that is something that has not ceased. There might be an additional day or two of lag time there, but we are able to process applications as we are also working remotely from the Presbyterian Foundation's home office. The other thing that you can do is set up a recurring donation. I know we've answered a couple of questions about that. You will have the option when you make your gift to do a one-time or to do a recurring gift. And that recurring gift could be weekly or monthly. And you also may have multiple funds for easy management. Many of my churches, for instance, will have a general fund or a capital fund, or it could even be linked to your legacy program, et cetera. All kinds of funds that are able to be set up to allow members to give to those specifically. If you would only like to do one fund, of course, you can do that as well. There is also a comment box. In that comment box, you could put things, if your members, for instance, have donor numbers. Some of my churches do that. You're able to put your name and here's my giving number. If you're giving to the general offering, but your gift is to be used for one great hour of sharing or some other special fund, you can indicate that in that special box also. So you're able to do that from either your laptop, desktop, computer, et cetera, or from your mobile device. From a bookkeeping standpoint, your leadership and those that you indicate on the form during the setup process, you will get copied on every donation that is made, and it will tell you that the person made a donation of this amount, and you're able to do that. You can download reports so that you're not trying to piece together those emails. You can download a spreadsheet that can help you with the way you're able to capture the giving. We are required legally to respond to every gift. And so you will get a thank you note from the foundation that you have made a gift for your church. And it will list that, it will list the amount, and it will thank the members for that gift. That will come out automatically. We will also prepare year-end reports and statements for donors that use that service. That is not to replace what you all do at the church level. Those statements and those thank you letters should, of course, be consistent and correspond with one another so that they match. It is often, I use mine as a checks and balances, for instance. If I get my online year-end statement from the Presbyterian Foundation, I get one from my church, excuse me, I'm able to match those two, and the amounts, of course, will match about how I've given to both. If I therefore give checks sometimes and give online, my statement from the church would combine both of those. You will receive the balance of your funds at the close of each month. That is an automatic transfer that normally occurs on the first or second business day of the month. You are able, therefore, to do all of your month-end reporting with that. If you would like to do any additional thank yous at that time, if you would like to do that at month end, you're able to do that as well. The impact of your donations, that is across all forms. I'm always an advocate for how we're able to connect our giving to ministry, especially during the time that we're in now. How are we able to tell the story of why your giving matters? You know, why does it matter? Because for some, unfortunately, they may think, well, we're not meeting. Maybe we don't need to give because we're not in service, et cetera, et cetera. It's up to us, incumbent upon the leadership of the church, to therefore explain why giving matters during this time. What areas of ministry are we participating in? Are we helping feed? Are we helping those that are experiencing underemployment, as Carl mentioned, et cetera? Why does your giving matter? And truthfully, that's not just for now. We always should tell that story about why giving matters. There is no monthly setup fee. That is often, as we've discussed thus far on the call. There are many services out there. And of course, while I am definitely an advocate for the foundation service, we are not in a vacuum. I know there are many others out there, as we talked about, even within your Presbytery, and all of them handle the processing of the fees differently. We don't do a setup fee, nor do we do a monthly or annual fee. The one fee that is charged is the administrative fee, that is 2% per transaction. How that works, if I just painted a simple example for you, that if a member gives $100, the church would receive 98. The member is able to claim $100 for tax purposes. And there is an option that if members would like to cover that 2% fee, or to have some type of, there's a checkbox you can make that say, I would like to slightly increase my gift to cover those fees. We are asked often to talk about the security levels. One thing that I hope that we are able to say to all of our churches with confidence is that as the Presbyterian Foundation, we've been around since 1799. So security is definitely something that we take seriously. We have been in the business with endowment funds and investments and all kinds of things through the years that we would not embark upon an endeavor if we believed it not to be secure. And so we definitely have extra measures, as you will see here, data security standards, et cetera. I know that is a concern often for those as we look at something new, a way to give. That is a question that comes up. We're happy to address that, but just know that we do have those security standards in place. Talked about this a little bit a few moments ago, but once we are resumed, I guess, as a way to say that, with our regular services, I would encourage you to think about ways that you could promote the service. I would hope this would continue well beyond this time of pandemic, but something that we would continue as a new way of our worship experience. And that would include bulletin inserts and posters and pew cards, et cetera. If you're asking what a pew card is, for some during the regular offering, it is important to put something in the plate, because that is something that is culturally important for many of our members. And so how do we have that same experience other than saying I gave at the office? You know, how do we really demonstrate that we have given? So a pew card allows you to place something in there to say, I have given to the church, but I did so electronically. I have a couple of those actually at the end of this presentation to show you what those would look like. Right here, these are just a sample. It can show you ways that you can give, the mobile phone, the website, online, et cetera. And then it can tell you how you would like to, you can scan that. In this case, the QR code, that is something that we do during setup, where you're able to place that QR code in your bulletin or somewhere else on handouts, et cetera, that would allow members to access that to give. A couple more here. ways to give online. So in closing, we're looking about our audience, who are we targeting? We say casual givers here because often our regular givers, and again, I think John mentioned this as well, we're not discouraging your check writers, those that are going to be more comfortable with mailing in their gifts, etc. You are possibly targeting those who aren't going to do that, maybe who are those that don't give perhaps at a regular frequency, that need something more of convenience of a reminder to give. It is a way to continue to reach out to your members. I think this contact is very important. I think the church has a very important role as we are dealing with the impacts of different isolated lifestyle. How we can do that with our services, our communications. I've seen letters, I've seen emails from presbyteries, et cetera, that we have reached out to our members, and how, again, online giving is not the message. It is a component to the other messages that are going out there of how we can stay connected. I am available for questions. I'm sure we've covered a lot during this morning presentation. So if you would like a unique one-on-one, how would this work for my church, please know that you can certainly contact me for that. In addition, on our website that you see here, we have a designated page for ways to deal with stewardship during this time of pandemic. So you look for our COVID-19 resources. The article that Carl mentioned is there. Online giving application is there. We have an administrative guide that would go over all the details and nuances that I covered this morning. I can certainly send that to Lawan and get that distributed to you all, but it's also available on our website if you would like to see that. And that is the 800 number. I don't think my number is on here. Nope. So my email is just Olanda, OLANDA.carr, CARR @presbyterianfoundation.org. But again, if you did not get that, trust me, everyone on the call knows how to find me in terms of the presenter. So I'm very easy to find, and I'm more than happy to chat with you for details and questions, etc.
Olanda, thank you very much. Very, very informational. I know for churches that are smaller or interested in using your services, that was very comprehensive. We've gone over the hour mark, but I'll take a couple last questions, and then for the presenters, and then we'll actually let everyone get back to whatever they're doing today, and look at possibly having a follow-up session to this in the future, because a lot of good information came out of this. This first question, Orlando, let's see, it's directed to you, Megan. Does the Presbyterian Foundation require minimum number of givers?
No, we do not. In fact, you can, my church created our service and we didn't use it for a year. I would not encourage you to do that, but there is no minimum. And when we finally started using it, it really took off. So that's one of the good things about not having that monthly service. If no one uses it, it's fine. If it takes a while for it to catch on and one or two folks use it, that's fine as well.
Okay. And also Susan asked, what is the first next step if a church wants to move forward with a foundation giving option? What's the first step?
The first step would truthfully be to review the guide that I mentioned. There's an application that's pretty easy to fill out. We will require a copy of a voided check of the account that we would send the donations to. A couple of folks are indicated as your fund administrators. Often it's your treasurer, your bookkeeper, those that perform the functions of your church. We'll need an authorized signature, which would be typically the clerk of session. You send that in, and that's pretty much the steps 1 through 3. And then we process it for you, and that's pretty much about it.
Okay. This question I found interesting. I'll give it to the whole panel. Maybe Carl, you can start. Joanne's, I'm wondering about food banks that are stocked with in-kind donations from churches. Has anyone explored encouraging people to make online orders to be delivered to the facility, or should we just emphasize making a financial gift? Should later go through the church for record keeping or directly to the facility?
Wow, wonderful question. I am definitely not the best person to answer this. I hope someone on the panel says, "Oh, I've got this one." I do know, however, that at this point, donations are pushed away from so many places if they are brought by individuals who are not engaged as official volunteers. I don't know if that's going to be a factor right now, but supporting financially, I think a lot of these places is so important, but hard for most of us, because so often we want to get there, we want to give the food, we want to walk that dog. But right now, from our emergency personnel, from our pastors, a lot of them are saying the greatest gift you can give me is nothing but, I'd say it's nothing but money right now, because our compelling need to be a part of the solution in person is actually a danger in many cases. And I don't know if this is actually specifically with a food bank, if we're talking about bringing food, but that's actually something that if it's someone without training or experience right now, apparently is fairly unwelcome. That's all I can really say that's not perhaps as helpful as maybe we're seeking. It's a great question, though. I wish I had a great answer. Anybody else on the panel? Or Dave? You know?
No, I know we had some giving directly to our shelter or our food pantry that we work with a couple of weeks ago, but I'll have to get an update on where that is right now. We were beginning that at the beginning of the month, so don't have an answer on that. I do have a question, Orlando, back to you. Any way to reduce fees by perhaps moving investments to the foundation?
No, truthfully, the fee that we charge is based off of the fee that Banco charges. And so we really can't wiggle with the fee. As an FYI, the funds that are placed during the month via the online donations are placed in a simple money market fund, and any interest earned is passed on to the church, but no way to unfortunately reduce that fee.
Okay. And then a quick follow-up, Sharon, the sample pew cards you showed, are they available in quantity purchase?
We do have some available on our website. Those are particular ones for churches. The ones that we have are more generic, but we have ways to help you with designing some as well that I could talk with you about.
Okay. And then last question, Carl, anybody on the panel from Holly, would it be helpful to encourage people to stretch out of their comfort zones and move from checks to online giving during this crisis?
Was that to Carl or?
Anybody on the panel can answer that.
Sure, especially we need to at least get ready for it because of what John mentioned. Things are going to be different. They're going to get more different. And we might not have someone sitting in the office to accept the check. And so for adaptability, I think we need to be ready to take something that goes directly to an account. That's my humble perspective. I mean, I would normally actually not say we need to start moving people, but I think we're at the point where we really do need to have a touchless option out there, be ready to advertise that, be ready to operate that. My humble opinion.
And the churches that I have personally heard from who set this up, some with just a couple of days notice, have had an overwhelming success, and they were also surprised of the ease if it was to putting it up and getting it on their website and putting it on their Facebook page and giving the information about how people can use this option. And they were impressed and overwhelmed by how easy and how many people then engaged when they did choose to set up from nothing before, from 4 days ago, nothing, to being able to have online giving, and it worked great for them.
Right.
I'd also echo that and say, I think for the time being, we need to figure out how to work smarter and not harder, because at this point, while we're not in the offices, this is probably the way we should go. And again, I would not normally recognize that, but this is really going to streamline and take the in-person work out. And I think that's going to be a priority really soon. for this area. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I think that wraps up. We've been an hour and 20 minutes. Let me have each of you just give a short summary if you can, each of the panelists, 3 panelists. Go ahead, Carl.
I'll have my stuff out there for its own summary, but what I guess I wanted to share is how deeply grateful I am that everyone is on this call today and trying to get our churches together through this, because we have a vital part, not just with our congregations, but our community, and that you all showed up today. Actually touches me. It means a lot to me, because I need this place here for me. I need it here for my family. I need it here for the people I sit beside every Sunday morning and the people I walk beside every weekday. I am deeply grateful for us making this church vibrant in a scary time. That's my words.
Orlando?
I would
Orlando,
say, no, you're fine. I would say similarly that we are definitely in a different time. And I think as we are trying to figure out how to be the church during this time, that online giving is just one of the many ways that we can connect with our membership. I hope that we will at least consider it. It's not meant, of course, to replace the other ways that folks can give, but it's certainly an option out there, an option that we believe is a way that can help our members to continue to participate and support our church until we're able to get together again.
All right, John, I'll give you the last word here.
So for those of you who are Enneagram enthusiasts, I am a 7, which is the enthusiast. So I'm already excited about what we're going to look like on the other side of this thing. And I know that could be overlooking what the possible mucky water that we're going to have to go through in the meantime is. But I'm hoping that the things that 58 of you who participate in this are doing now to help set some of this stuff up, so that in 4 or 5 weeks, we're not trying to scramble to figure out how we're going to best be able to support our churches and our institutions and organizations through this time. So it is refreshing to see this many people who are throwing questions, engage, and trying their best to set these things up. And at the end of this, we will be in a better place because we were forced to put some of these practices in place now to help us be able to streamline what we do as churches, as congregations, as ministries. So thank you all for being here, for listening. For those of you who are watching it recorded later, thank you. Please share it. This is great stuff that we need to get into as many of our churches as we possibly can.
Great. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, our panelists. Let me just remind you that this session has been recorded, and it'll be posted up on the NCP website, but we'll also send out a follow-up email with link to the people who attended, so you can share this with members, look at it again. It's been a great experience, I think, for all of us. Maybe this inspires to do something again in 3 to 4 weeks if we're in this situation, to try to update everybody. Obviously, this technology and this platform is easy to work with. So again, thank you, everybody. We will get this up as soon as possible for the recording, and everybody stay safe out there and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Luan.